Okay, all right. We are on chapter 2 of Tanya today. So, chapter 2 introduces the Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul of the Jew. Now, let's just review very briefly.
When did we get to chapter two?
Whoops, hold on. Let me do everybody
When did we?
here. There we go. Okay, so let's just review very briefly. Chapter 1, the Alter Rebbe introduced us to the two soul system. Again, that's not the Alter Rebbe's Chiddush. That comes from the Arizal, comes from Kabbalists even before the Arizal. But the Alter Rebbe certainly made it popular, popularized it, and up until this point, this type of knowledge was just sort of handed down from individuals to individuals. It wasn't really until the Alter Rebbe that, I mean, starting really with Baal Shem Tov, but more the Alter Rebbe that really this information began spreading to the masses. And in a manner that we can actually relate to it, understand it, incorporate it in our own Avodas Hashem. And so really the foundation of this path of attachment to Hashem, this path of Avodas Hashem is really, as we are going to see, is miyusad, is really based on these two souls, the two soul system that we have, and the tension that is constant that constantly exists between these two souls. So in chapter 1, the Alter Rebbe introduced us to what he called the Nefesh Bahamas, the animal soul, or the Nefesh Chayunis. It's also called the vivifying soul, and this is the soul that we share with all humanity. Every human being has this soul, and this soul is comprised of um, all of our what basically what we would call our nature. And our nature consists of our positive qualities, and our nature also has our negative qualities. And every one of us has our own unique nature, and that's based upon the makeup of the Nefesh Bahamas. We'll describe in the future, in the very near future chapters. Thank you. In the very near future chapters, we'll describe the actual makeup of the soul and what the soul is comprised of. But we'll get there. As for right now, what the Alter Rebbe has focused on is the motivation of the animal soul. The animal soul is basically egocentric, like every animal. It is focused on self. It is focused on what is best and most pleasurable and most desirable for self, for the bodily self. And this soul is the soul that animates us. This soul is the soul that vivifies us. So any movement that we make is an expression of this soul. And for most of us, this soul is our sort of our default consciousness. Because as we're going to say, and the Alter Rebbe hasn't discussed it yet, but the two souls, the godly soul and the animal soul, I spoke about this last week, have sort of this Rome, Israel, yin, yang, zeh comes, zeh nofo relationship. The stronger one is, the weaker the other becomes. And so for the vast majority of us, our default setting is that our consciousness, our motivations in life, are what motivates us practically, what is in the frontal cortex of our brain, so to speak, is this Nefesh Bahamas, this animal soul. And therefore, for most of life, we live life according to our nature. And this is one of the beauties of so many elements of Yiddishkeit, is that so many elements of Yiddishkeit really demand from us to transcend our nature. And how do we do that? There are so many parts of Yiddishkeit that demand that. And how do we transcend our nature? If our nature is our motivating consciousness, our nature is the forefront of our mind. How do we transcend that? How do we go beyond that? And when we do transcend that, then what's motivating us? And so here comes in the godly soul. And so the godly soul, so the animal soul, the Alter Rebbe described, is a mixture. If we would look on the so-called ingredients of the animal soul, even though it's a strange word to use for something spiritual, but just so that we can understand and relate to it, the ingredients, the animal soul is made up of two forces. And the Alter Rebbe calls it Klippas Noga. On one hand, it's made up of klippa. Klippa literally means shell, like the shells of a fruit are called the klippa. The klippa of the fruit. The shell of the fruit is the klippa. So klippa literally means shells or husks. And these are divine energies that conceal godliness. Because initially, all of before pre-creation, there was just God, right? And in order for there to be brought about physical creation, that godly energy has to be contracted, concealed, and it goes through. And this is a little bit beyond the scope of today's class, but this godly energy goes through a sort of a celestial descent, a celestial evolutionary descent, where at every step of the descent, the godly energy is covered over. Now, what can cover over godly energy? Only God himself can cover over godly energy. So God creates, so to speak, these husks, or these spiritual husks, or shells that conceal godliness. So when the shell has completely concealed godliness, that brings about physicality. So that we have this physical world where we look around and we don't perceive godliness at all. Now, we know godliness is here, but we don't perceive it. It's completely covered over and concealed. So this world is sort of the final stage, the bottom stage of this evolutionary descent of creation. And so these husks and these shells cover over and conceal godliness. So that's the klippa. So the animal soul is made up from on one hand, these husks and these shells that conceal godliness. And on the other hand, there's a godly energy there as well. That's called klippas noga. Klippa is the shell, and noga means light in Aramaic. That's the godliness. So therefore, our nature, our animal soul, is not all evil, all bad, all ra. It's a mixture. It's a mixture of that which covers over godliness, and therefore it's egocentric, it's concealed, because what is ego? Ego is literally, the definition of that is when godliness is completely covered over and I'm focused totally on my physical self. So our ego is part of that animalistic consciousness. But there's noga there as well. There's godliness there as well. Therefore, our nature is comprised of as the Gemara says, by shanim, geim lechasadim. There's humility. There's the desire to do good, etc. Our nature is comprised of both good and bad. Our animal soul is comprised of both good and bad. The main thing about it is it's egocentric, that its force is egocentric. So when it is the main motivating force within my mind and within my consciousness, then I'm primarily an egocentric being. I'm primarily focused on self. And then there is embedded in that animal soul, Hashem embeds a second soul. This is unique to Klal Yisrael. The Nefesh Bahamas, everybody has. So everybody has a soul. Every human being. What is unique to the Jewish people is the Nefesh Elokis. And the reason why we were given this second soul is because we have a unique responsibility to the world. So in order, that is being Shevet Torah and mitzvahs. That is our unique responsibility to transform the world and transform ourselves through the power of Torah and mitzvahs. In order to empower us to do that, Hashem gave us this koyach, this strength, this power through this godly soul. And what is this godly soul comprised of? This is chapter 2. This is what we're going to speak about. But what's interesting, it's not like it's side by side. You know, like in the children books where you have the little angel here and the little devil here. So we sort of think about it like that, but that's not, as the Alter Rebbe is going to describe, that is not how it is. It's actually, in the body is invested the animal soul, and that's what animates the body. And the godly soul is actually invested in the animal soul, embedded deep within the animal soul. So that when the godly soul actually motivates the human being, it profoundly transforms the animal soul as well. And in fact, the godly soul utilizes the animal soul, because the animal soul is what motivates us, what makes us move, what animates us, I should say. So when the godly soul wants us to put on tefillin or light Shabbos candles or give tzedakah or animate us in any way, It has to utilize the intermediary of the animal soul. And the reason Hashem made it that way is so that the animal soul will be rectified and refined with every mitzvah that we do. And that actually is part of our mission here in this world. Every one of us was put here for a variety of purposes and missions from above. Primarily, we all have the general mission of la'ases dira b'tachtenim, to make a dira for Hashem, to make a dwelling place for Hashem in this lowly world, to transform the physical world into a world of godliness. That is a mission that we all have. But in addition to that, we all have our own personal, unique shlichusin, missions from Hashem as well. One of those is to refine and rectify the animal soul that we all have. And I spoke about this 2 weeks ago, so I'm not going to go into great length at this. But how is that animal soul refined when the godly soul is activated? It refines every time the godly soul is activated. Every time the godly soul wants to animate the human being, it has to work through the intermediary of the animal soul, thereby refining the animal soul. So if you want to know what your particular shluchus here is in vis-a-vis refining your own animal soul, those midos that we struggle with, those midos that we're constantly battling, is usually a sign that is what needs to be rectified. So for example, if I have an anger issue, or if I have a taiva issue, or if I have a jealousy issue, or if I have a sinas chinam issue, whatever it may be, it's usually a leftover from a previous incarnation that hasn't been refined. Most of us have been here multiple times for multiple incarnations, working and striving to refine this animal soul. And the parts of it that have not yet been refined, we come back again to refine. And how do we know which areas need refinement? The areas that we struggle with. The areas that we don't struggle with are usually a sign that they have been refined in a previous gilgul. Okay, I don't want to get off topic here. So this godly soul, this is an incredible power that exists within us. And as the Alter Rebbe is going to describe it, it is literally a piece of the infinite that Hashem implants within every one of us, which is why Klal Yisrael is not bound by chuki hateva. We're not bound by the laws of nature. It seems like we are. I mean, we work and we live within the parameters of nature. But if you just look at, you don't have to look too far. If you just look even at the most chitzonius look at Jewish history, the fact that we are all sitting here today, the fact that Klal Yisrael is still here today, alive and thriving and transforming the world, when we've had empire after empire and nation after nation who has sought to annihilate us and destroy us, from the Roman Empire to the Greek Empire to the Babylonian Empire to the Persian Empire, et cetera, all the way down to modern times. And yet today, where are the Romans and the Greeks and the Egyptians and the Babylonians and the Persians today? Today they're all in the ash bin of history. But Klal Yisrael is still here, even though these were nations that were more militarized, larger than us, swallowed up entire empires whole, never to be heard from again, and every one of them set their eyes to destroy Klal Yisrael. And here we are. You don't have to go too far to see that our existence is l'mayla mederech hateva. And this is why we are connected to the infinite. So as long as Klal Yisrael is connected to the infinite, we are infinite. As a nation, we are infinite. But it also means individually. We often feel that we are bound by our nature. How many times have people told me, Rabbi, what can I do? This is my nature. I once had this is my nature. My father was like this. My grandfather was like this. I once had a janitor in Chabad house when I worked in Coconut Grove, Florida. And I have so many lessons in Avodas Hashem I have from John, our Irish janitor. And one of those lessons was that John was a proud Irishman, and John was a raging alcoholic. And I became very close with him, and I tried so hard because he was literally drowning himself in alcohol. He had a general principle by our Kiddush that when you clean up for the Kiddush, that any bottle of alcohol that was closed, belonged to Chabad. But if it was open, it was his. At the end of the Kiddush, it was his. And we'd come back from Mincha Ma'ariv, and John would be laid out and I would speak to him so often about getting help and trying to save his life. I had such an affinity to him. I really liked him. And he would tell me the same thing every time. Rabbi, I literally have no choice in this. I come from a long line of proud Irish drunks. He says, my grandfather, my great grandfather, my father, I'm just carrying on. This is in my DNA. I have no choice. And as much as that's an extreme, but in a very real way, we're all like that a little bit. We all feel, hey, listen, this is the way I was born. I was born with this nature. My grandfather had an anger problem. My father had an anger, and I have an anger problem. And you know what? There is some truth to that. We are born with a certain nature, but we're meant to transcend that nature. We're meant to rise above that nature. And it's through accessing our nefesh elokis that we learn to be able to do that. So now, how normally it works is that, as I said, as one soul is strong, the other one is weak. So for most of us, our default setting is our animal soul is the strong soul. That is the forefront of our consciousness. That's our frontal cortex. That is mainly what motivates us. And so I could be a Jew, Shemer Torah and mitzvahs my entire life, and yet never transcend my animal soul, never go beyond my nature. And this is what the Alter Rebbe wants from us. This is the path of the Alter Rebbe, to learn how to make a real paradigm shift, where our animal soul becomes no longer our default setting and our motivating consciousness, but our godly soul becomes our motivating consciousness. So the question is, because as long as my animal soul is strong and that is what's motivating me and that is the forefront of my consciousness, my godly soul is weak, because again, they have this sort of Rome, Israel, yin yang, zeh comes, zeh nofel relationship. One rises, the other falls. So the question is, how do we go from this default setting of our animal soul, our egocentric energy, our egocentric consciousness, being the forefront of our consciousness, being the motivating factor within me, and switch that? How do we access and tap into the energy of our godly soul? That's really the biggest question. So step number one is to understand this godly soul, what it is, and its relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's Perek Beis. Because really, the 53 chapters of Tanya is really that. How do we access, how do we empower our godly consciousness and thereby transcend the negative elements of my nature, so that those negative elements of my nature, I can come to a point, and this is the sort of, there's never a finish line. We're always striving higher, but sort of the goal of Tanya, the goal of what we are striving to reach after learning the 53 chapters, is how can I live in a consistent fashion, transcending the negative elements of my nature, so that whatever negative elements exist, anger, taiva, gaiva, whatever it may be, we all have our own negative elements, and each one is unique to us. How do I reach a point where they never manifest themselves outwardly? That I may battle them internally, but they never manifest themselves outwardly. How do I reach that point so that I am consistently in a place where I am spiritually connected? I am literally behaviorally in not only behavior control, but behaviorally at the highest level that I'm able to be at, and spiritually to live a consciously connected, godly life, and yet still live in Olam Hazeh. That's the point. And the Alter makes this a point as well. You know, there are certain elements, let's say within Judaism. The only way to do this is remove yourself from the world, live removed from the world. And there are certain even elements within Orthodox Judaism that believe that, hey, the best way to do this is remove ourselves from the world. But we see Chabad as the opposite of that, right? Chabad goes to everywhere in the world. Chabad's everywhere. Because this is exactly why it's based on Tanya. The point is not to remove ourselves from the world. Because if we remove ourselves from the world, we're not elevating the world. We're not transforming the world. The point is to live in the world. And yet, instead of being dominated by the worldly and ego consciousness, to be motivated and dominated internally by godly consciousness. That's the goal. And the Alter Rebbe tells us in the preface of Tanya, this isn't such a far off, lofty goal that you could think, well, that's only for the tzaddikim who could really do that. The Alter Rebbe tells us in the very shar blot of Tanya, if we remember, Ki karev elecha davar ma'od. This is absolutely attainable for every single one of us. And the Alter Rebbe says, I am going to give you a path. And as we will see in Tanya, it's not just one path. The Alter Rebbe actually gives us a variety of paths based upon the level of spirituality we are on. So you could be somebody who's an incredibly lofty spiritual person, and the Alter Rebbe, like Rachel Feld and my wife, and the Alter Rebbe gives them one path, and then you have the Rabbi Simons of the world who are on the other end of the spectrum, and the Alter Rebbe gives us our path. And so, as we will see, the Alter Rebbe is going to speak to every single one of us, because sometimes you learn, these works of spirituality, and they're just beyond us. I just can't relate to that. I can't connect to that path. The Alter Rebbe gives us a path for every single one of us. So no matter where we are on the spiritual scale, the Alter Rebbe has a path for us to learn how to sort of flip this default setting so that our godly consciousness is at our forefront. Okay. So with that too lengthy of a preface, let's jump into Perek Beis and jump into the makeup of the godly soul. Not even the makeup. What is the godly soul? Okay, so chapter 2, page 7 on the bottom. So Perek Beis, the Nefesh Hashenis B'Yisrael. So says the Alter Rebbe, the second soul. And the reason why the Alter Rebbe doesn't start with this soul is because the first soul, the animal soul, is our main consciousness. So that's why the Alter Rebbe started with that. But here we have our second soul. The Nefesh Hashenis B'Yisrael, Hi Chelek Eloka Mimal Mamish. So Chelek Eloka Mimal, portion of God from above. It's a pasuk in Iyov. The Alter Rebbe adds the word Mamish, which means literally. Literally, a portion of the infinite that Hashem put into every single one of us, which gives us, in a very real way, the power of the infinite. That's why we're not bound by the laws of nature, not collectively, but also individually. You are not bound by your nature. You're not even bound by the laws of nature. A Jew can transcend the laws of nature. We have the capacity to transcend ourselves because we're connected to the infinite, to transcend our own nature. So, and the Alter Rebbe traces it all the way back to the origins of Adam HaRishon. That when Adam HaRishon's soul was created, how was it created? How did Adam HaRishon receive his soul? It was exhaled into him, which is fascinating, because if we look at the difference between that and every other element of creation, including the human body, was brought about through divine speech. And God said, let there be light. And God said, let there be a firmament, etc., etc. And so all of creation is brought about through divine speech, with the exception of the neshama of Adam HaRishon. The neshama of Adam HaRishon was brought about through God exhaling that soul into him. Why? Why that difference? And the Alter Rebbe is going to show that difference is incredibly significant. Because take a look at the human body, as there's a pasuk in Iyov that says, "Mebasari echsa Eloka," that from studying the human body, I can grasp some ideas of godliness. That our body is not random. The way that our body works, and the fact that we have 10 fingers and 10 toes and not 9 and not 11, nothing is random. Our bodies are actually a mirror, a reflection of various spiritual realities. So similarly, how our body works as well is a reflection of various spiritual realities. So if you, speaking, for example, so I could speak 1,000 words, 10,000 words. Person could speak for hours and not get exhausted, because speaking comes from a very external energy force within me. But what if I exhale forcefully? How many times can I exhale forcefully before I get lightheaded, very few, right? And the reason why is because when I exhale, it comes from a deeper, inner, more energy force. And that's why I can only exhale a few times and I lose energy. I start getting lightheaded. So the reason that is physically is because that's a manifestation of a spiritual reality as well. And this is what he's going to say. This is what by God exhaling Adam Arishon's neshama, it is showing that the soul comes from a different place, a deeper place than the rest of creation, which is brought about through speech. The speech is an external energy force. It's an external element of godliness. Exhaling represents a much more internal. Now, obviously, when we say God spoke and God exhaled, we're only using metaphors. Obviously, it goes without saying, but I want to say it anyway, that we're using metaphors that the human being can understand. We don't mean literally God spoke and not literally God exhaled. These are just God speaking is a form of revelation, just like our speaking is a form of revelation. When I speak, I'm taking something that's concealed in my mind and I'm revealing it to the world. So speech is a form of revelation. So when it says divine, when it speaks about God speaking, there's obviously God doesn't have a mouth and God doesn't have a voice, etc. It means God revealed. It's revelation. So when we're talking about exhaling, that's a revelation from a much deeper place. It's not an external revelation of external godliness, but a much deeper place within God himself. So as our own exhaling comes from a much deeper place. Okay, so this is what he's going to bring about. So this is the nefesh elokis, the godly soul, comes from a very deep place within Hashem himself. It's literally a portion of the infinite. Okay, so v'yipach ba'apav nishmas chaim, and we also say every morning in Birchas HaShachar, we remind ourselves of our koyach when we say v'ata nefachta bi, you exhaled the neshama into me. Right? When does the child receive his nefesh elokis? At that first breath. When that child cries and receives in the womb, the child is connected to the nefesh Bahamas. That's what animates him, etc. The nefesh elokis comes when the child is born, and he exhales and he breathes, and that soul is exhaled into him. Nefesh elokis is exhaled into him. Right. Huh? Part of it. Yeah, in stages. Yeah, and similarly by the convert, by the person who converts, the moment they emerge from the mikvah, that first breath that nefesh elokis is exhaled into them. Yeah.
So all the nations are born come from Adam Rishon. How could the Jews become only so?
Yeah, we'll get there. We will get there. It's a fair question. That's a fair question. Okay, we'll get there. We'll talk about that. All right, but let's focus here on the nefesh elokis of and where it originates from this deep place where Hashem exhaled it into, and that's why it's exhaled versus spoken. As the Zohar says, man de nafach, that anyone who exhales, miteicheha nafach, he's doing it from his innermost self. What does that mean? It's coming from a very deep energy source within the human being. That inner energy within the human being comes out when he exhales strongly, powerfully. So that means a powerful exhale originates from a very deep place within our own energy source, which is why we can only powerfully exhale a few times before we get dizzy and lightheaded, before our energy dissipates. So similarly, our soul, the soul of Adam Rishon, which is where our soul originates from. Now, Farah had a good question. Everybody's soul originates from Adam Rishon, which we'll talk about that when we get there. So that's one sort of biblical proof that the origin of our soul is coming from a deeper place than the rest of creation. Kach al derech mashal. Now he's going to bring another proof. Kach al derech mashal, a second proof. Neshamas Yisrael alu b'machshava. So there's a medrash, and it says in Zohar as well, that pre-creation, even before creation, Neshamas Yisrael were alu b'machshava. That even before the creation began, Hashem thought of and conceived of Neshamas Yisrael. What would be the ultimate purpose of creation? Which is Neshamas Yisrael, elevating the world and transforming the world. So that means Neshamas Yisrael were alu b'machshava. We arose in the divine thought even before creation began. But as we're going to see, there is something, in fact, very spiritually profound about us arising in the divine thought pre-creation. K'diksiv, and it also says, B'ni b'chari Yisrael, that we have this parent-child relationship with Hashem as well. As Hashem calls us, his banim. Right? This is B'ni b'chari Yisrael was the first time Hashem said that, but it's many times. Banim atam l'Hashem Elokeichem. There are many times that Hashem refers to us as his children, that we have this child-parent relationship. there's a connection between the two. What's the relationship, or the fact that we were Allah b'machshava and that we have this parent-child relationship with Hashem? There is a connection between the two. Oh, he says, Banamatim Hashem Elokechem, another pasuk, etc. That brings it as well. So Perish, so what's the connection between the fact that we're Banim and the fact that we're Allah b'machshava? He says, the same way the physical human being is created. How is his Perish Kamoi Shahaben Nimshach Mamoyecha of? He says, just like a child, where does the child originate? He says the child originates from the drop of seminal fluid from the father. That drop of seminal fluid begins where? It begins with the production of hormones released in the brain. So there's a very strong connection. It used to be in times of antiquity, they thought literally that semen was a part of the cerebral matter that was drawn down through the spine. That was shown to be not anatomically correct, but there is a very deep relationship between the creation of the seminal drop and the brain. It's through the release of hormones that create the seminal drop that ultimately creates the child. And when that seminal drop then goes through the gestation period in the womb of the mother, which the Alter is going to talk about. So just like that seminal drop originates in the brain of the father with the hormonal production, kach kaviyachol neshamas kol ish Yisrael. The reason it works that way physically is because that's how it is spiritually, that we originated in the mind of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak. We originate, the Neshamas Yisrael originate. When we talk about that we were Allah b'machshava, it's more than just Hashem thought of us pre-creation. The soul originates, the creation of the soul originates in the brain of Hashem, in the mind of Hashem. Why is that so profound? And here the Alter Rebbe is going to explain the difference between Hashem's intellect and our intellect. Because the Iyu Chachem, v'loi b'chachem yediyah, when we talk about Hashem's wisdom, it doesn't mean wisdom like you and I have wisdom. It's not the same. Chachma yediyah is the wisdom that we have, that we understand. Hashem's Chachma is not a Chachma that we fathom or understand. Because what we understand wisdom is, as we get older, we have more knowledge, we accumulate more wisdom. Wisdom for us is an accumulation of facts, of knowledge that we gain as we go through life. It's not a part of our etzem, it's not a part of our essence. I could forget things, I could lose my wisdom. A person, God forbid, loses his memory or loses his ability that doesn't take away from the identity of the person. Our wisdom is external to us. But Hashem's not like that. Hashem's wisdom is literally a part of him. He is the knowledge and he is the knower. So it's not a composition that is added on to him. And this is what it means. It's not Chachma Yediyah. It's not the kind of Chachma that we're talking about. Elahu v'chachmasei echad. Hashem and his wisdom are one. See, we and our wisdom are not one. Our wisdom is a compilation that's added on to us as we go through life. But Hashem and his wisdom are truly all one entity. And again, we can't, the Alter was going to say, we can't really fathom this. We can say the words, we can't really fathom it because it's beyond the parameters of what we can even relate to. But we can just try to understand it as much as we can. Kamesha Kasav Rambam, as Maimonides explains, Shehu Amada, he is the knowledge, Vahu HaYedea, and he is the knower, and he is the Das, he is everything. He's the power to know, he is the knowledge. So, it's not separate from him at all. So when we talk about us coming from the wisdom of Hashem, it literally means the essence of Hashem. He and his wisdom are one. We can't really understand this with real clarity because it's parameters that are beyond our parameters. K'diksiv, as the Navi tells us, if you search God, if you fathom his godliness, can you ever truly grasp it? Of course not. It's the finite trying to grasp the infinite. We can never truly grasp it. K'diksiv, as Yeshayahu says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. Hashem's chachma is beyond what we can fathom and understand. But nevertheless, what we gain from this, what the understanding that we get from this is we are Allah b'machshava, neshamas Yisrael, the nefesh Elokis originates in the machshava of Hashem, which is literally one with Hashem. So that means what we have within us is literally a portion of the infinite, with infinite powers, with infinite abilities, enclosed in our finite animal soul and our finite body. But that means that we have an incredible treasure that most of us don't even access. And again, we can go through our whole lives, living 120 years, Shemer Torah and mitzvahs, and yet never really access on a consistent basis this incredible, infinite, powerful force that we have within us. Because for most of us, again, it lies dormant. And our animal soul is our primary consciousness. So now that the Alter Rebbe is teaching us that we have this incredible, infinite koyach within us, the question really is how do we access it? How do we tap into it? Because that's going to be really life-changing if we can do that. And we can do it. It's absolutely accessible. And the Alter Rebbe is going to give us a path on how to do it. And it really is life-changing. It really is life-changing. And it's Avodas Hashem changing for sure. So the question is then, and this is the question, we'll leave off with this question because I see I'm out of time already. The question is, if everybody's soul, if every single soul is rooted in this infinite wisdom of Hashem, which is one with Hashem, then why do we talk about madregas of souls? Because we do. We talk about the souls of the Avos, the souls of Moshe Rabbeinu, the souls of the Himois. These are obviously the souls of the great tzaddikim that are in every generation. These are obvious loftier souls. So how can there be a division of souls if everybody is rooted in the exact same place? So for that, not that I want to give you sleepless nights for a week, that you're not going to, but we'll leave off on there, and then we will continue in Mirza Hashem next week and describe how there can be. Ultimately, what the answer is going to be, just because I don't want to have anyone have sleepless nights, what the answer is going to be is that as the soul manifests itself, there's various layers, soul layers, so to speak. So at the soul layer place, at the soul layer point, there are various madrigas, there are various levels of souls. But at the core of the soul, when you peel away all of the layers, at the very core of the soul, every single Jew shares the exact same source. And so that means from the loftiest Moshe Rabbeinu all the way down to the lowliest neshamas in our generation, the generation of Mashiach, the lowliest of neshamas, every single soul is sourced in the exact same place. And this is, if you want to know where Chabad's no judgment zone comes from, this is literally where it's rooted at. When this is what the Rebbes of Chabad sort of imbued within their Chassidim, that when you look at a Jew, you don't just see the external differences and differentiations that exist between us. You see underneath it all, there is the neshama that is equal to the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. There is at the core of that Jew's soul is the spark that is connected to the essence of Hashem that he shares with Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Moshe, Aaron, and all of the great tzaddikim. And so that's how we're meant to look at one another. And in fact, the Alter Rebbe in Perek Lamed Beis, the Alter Rebbe gives an entire Perek on Avos Yisrael and how to have real Avos Yisrael. And this is the real bottom line. It depends what your perspective is in life. If you have a very external perspective in life, if you go through life valuing the externals, what people look like, how much money people make, what houses people live in, if you value the externals, if you live looking at the externals, it's impossible to have Avos Yisrael because externally we all are different. But if you live your life deeper and you live your life looking beyond the externals at the inner essence of what life is all about, at the inner essence of what you are all about, that when you look at your fellow human being, you don't see the externals, the differentiations. You see the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Avram Avinu, of Sarah Imenu, of Rivka Imenu, etc. You see that neshama within them, and that's how to have real Avos Yisrael. Looking at the point, at the core of the neshama that binds us all, that bounds us all. Okay, we'll stop there, Mr. Shem. We will continue Perek Beis and the Nefesh Elokis next week. Hashem. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful week, a wonderful day, and we'll see everybody next week in Mirza Hashem.
Thank you.